It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Through copse and spinney marched Bear, down open slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone into the heather again, and so, at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. Where did you play when you were a kid? Was it outside in nature with trees and dirt and sunshine? Or maybe in a city with buildings, cars, the odd scraps of grass, and a ball? No matter where you grew up, it's certain that those places you played in live with you still. And as a kid with your imagination soaring, you had stories for those places, stories that you may still carry, special things that you kept for yourself. The map of the 100-Acre Wood, illustrated by Ernest Shepard for Alan Milne's Winnie the Pooh, is not a great map in the same vein as most of the others in this series. It hasn't been hugely influential in the history of mapping, it's not scientifically innovative or technically remarkable, it's not something emblematic of an era or a people. It's just a little cutesy map, drawn for an English children's book. And yet I think it's worth covering all the same. Most of us don't have maps of our childhoods. We don't make maps of those special places, and if we looked at where we were young on a Google map, it would feel so empty and dead compared to the tapestry of our experiences and imaginings. One of the things, then, that's so remarkable about the map of the 100-Acre Wood is that it's faithful to the real world and the imaginary world of Christopher Robin. There isn't any division between these two worlds in childhood, and neither is there in the 100-Acre Wood map. Incredibly, through the attention to detail and sense of place in this one little map, both children and adults can see their own childhoods, and us older folks can find parts of ourselves that might seem to have been lost long ago. The creator of the 100-Acre Wood map was Ernest H. Shepard, the illustrator for the Winnie the Pooh series of books written by A. Milne in the mid-1920s. Milne and Shepard worked closely together over the span of the 3 books, and the whole universe of Winnie the Pooh really ends up being a product not only of their collaboration, but also the imagination of Milne's son, Christopher Robin Milne. Milne and Shepard never thought that these little stories would be so popular. When Milne wrote the initial Winnie the Pooh book, When We Were Very Young, he saw it as a small side project, not something that would eclipse his life and be read by millions around the world. His publisher suggested having Shepard illustrate the works, and though Milne was skeptical at first, he was convinced after seeing some of Shepard's initial sketches and ideas. E.H. Shepard was a visual artist his whole life. He was a precocious child and grew up in an upper-middle-class English family that encouraged his talents, leading him straight into a life of artistic pursuits. He struggled at times, but eventually won his way into regular work at Punch, the enormously popular British weekly publication that ran through the 1800s to the mid-1900s. He drew everything: scenes of daily life, little fun drawings, political satire, book covers, landscapes, and much more. In fact, when he fought in World War I, Shepard found himself drawing still. His ability to accurately sketch positions and details were extremely useful to British intelligence, and he spent much of his time in the war sending back information from the front lines to headquarters. That being said, Shepard was never a cartographer or a map maker. He was always a visual artist. Both Milne and Shepard, actually, were World War I veterans. The men shared much as well in terms of their upper-middle-class, artistically oriented upbringings. No one really knows how much these two men's experiences of war influenced the creation and tone of Winnie the Pooh, but many have speculated about this. It would seem likely that the intense and brutal times of the war could have led Milne to seek out a calmer, idyllic kind of world for his own son Christopher. Shepard may have been thinking back to the times before the war, when he had been raising his own children. Perhaps the 100-acre wood that we know is a kind of Eden after the firestorm, something soft and loving to counteract the hardship of the prior years. When it came to illustrating the stories for Winnie the Pooh, Shepard preferred to draw from life rather than just out of thin air. One publisher, who happened to be present during a working session between Shepard and Milne, described the scene of creation. Milne sitting on the sofa reading the story, Christopher Robin sitting on the floor playing with the characters, and by his side on the floor, E.H. Shepard making sketches for the illustrations. This tendency to draw from real life took on further meaning when it came to drawing the landscapes of the 100-acre wood. In the early 1920s, around the time of the writing of Winnie the Pooh, Milne acquired a country home in Sussex called Cochwood Farm, a place where the family would sometimes go on weekends. Yes, the 100-acre wood is a real place. Well, actually it was called the 500-acre wood, but still it exists in East Sussex, England, right near that country home of Milne's. The wood is part of a larger forest called Ashdown Forest, which has been protected since medieval times, whether as a hunting forest or a natural preserve. It's a place of beautiful views, pastures, heathlands, oaks, and birches. It's not a heavily wooded place for the most part, and it's generally full of heather, gorse, and boggy plants. Shepard spent quite a lot of time in Ashdown Forest and made detailed sketches of many scenes. Christopher Robin, after all, played in these forests, and the stories that Milne wrote had very specific locations. In fact, Milne would take Shepard out to show him the specific places where different stories happened. Shepard would then sit there sketching, watching the birds and the trees and feeling the nature of the forest. I think this sense of place is incredibly important to what makes Winnie the Pooh stories so universal. By being written in such a personal way about a specific boy and his troop of stuffed friends, it paradoxically becomes possible to transplant the stories into every place of every child around the world. The reason this works is because all of us have that sense of place, especially when we're first exploring the world as children, finding and making stories in our little patches of the world. The 100-acre wood stands in for wherever your childhood was, wherever your dreams, laid on top of the physical world, formed the stories that you played out in your imagination. Now, coming back to the map of the 100-acre wood, it perfectly exemplifies this sense of place and the unity of the real world and imaginary world that we all experience as children. There's no big concern about being precise and obsessive in this map. It's playful, it's funny, it's serious, it's sad, it's everything mixed together at once. It's alive. We can remember how we named things as kids. There's the 6 pine trees, or the floody place, or the bee tree. Where I grew up, we used to play on a big embankment, which we just called the bank, something that would fit right in on this kind of map. There are stories here too. Pooh Trap for Heffalumps, Rabbit's Friends, and characters. Eeyore in his gloomy place, Piglet's house, Pooh's place. And of course Christopher Robin's house, labeled as My House. This puts us right into the story, right into the map. It's us. We were once, or are still if we're young enough, in this map, in the story with Pooh and his friends. The little misspellings and the remarkably good drawings combine to give us the sense of adults and children working together to tell stories. We can even see that in the little byline along the bottom. Drawn by me and Mr. Shepard helped. The compass, most lovely of all, shows Pooh. The real orientation of this world is north, south, east, west, and POOH. It's real and it's imaginary, and there's no contradiction between the two. Remarkably, when we look at this map over top of a map of the real part of Ashdown Forest that Christopher Robin played in, we see again that careful sense of place, tying the book to the real world. The angles of the geographies are a little different, and we don't know the real locations of everything, but in this lower left-hand part that is marked as a marshy area, we know that it probably is marshy because of the name of the road there, and here the river splits in a similar way in the real map. In the park nowadays, there's even a Pooh Visitor Center, and the bridge where Christopher and Pooh played Pooh Sticks, which, by the way, is an internationally renowned game, has been rebuilt, and it's still used today. I think this map is something really genuine. I think it touches something very deep in humans and our sense of place, the importance of places to us. We don't make maps of our lives like Google Maps, but more like this. Events and tiny little specific stories define the places we live. The coffee shop where you get a particular order every morning, the tree you like to watch waving outside your window, the rocky beach you go to see sunsets, or where you fell that one time on your bike. Memory is all about place. All of us could make maps like this for ourselves and have a fun time doing it. As people, and maybe especially adults, we tend to get wrapped up in peculiar ideas about precision and the need to do things right so that other people will be impressed. We're a little bit like Owl in the Pooh stories, puffing ourselves up to look smart. And we end up looking a little foolish when we miss the sound of the wind in the trees when we're so busy measuring and counting. The map of the 100 Acre Wood is not a precise map. You couldn't use it to navigate anywhere, but you can use it to do something much more important. Remember and feel the places and stories of your life and your childhood. Why not draw a map like this? Why not have a little fun? Our stories are embedded in the land where imagination and nature collide, and there's room for everything there, from silly Pooh getting stuck in a hole to Eeyore feeling sad about being forgotten by everyone. The 100 Acre Wood map might not be lauded by map makers or high on the list of important historical maps, and E.H. Shepard might not have been a cartographer, but I think he understood something about the importance of place when it came to telling stories and making art. Milne wrote a little poem once. "When I am gone, let Shepard decorate my tomb, and put, if there is room, 2 pictures on the stone. Piglet from page 111, and Pooh and Piglet walking, 157. And Peter, thinking they are my own, will welcome me to heaven." Winnie the Pooh and the 100 Acre Wood already has a place in the hearts of many, and will continue to for generations to come. Milne and Shepard and Christopher Robin, creating this story in such a specific yet universal way, allow us all to touch childhood again and share it with each other so that wherever they go and whatever happens to them on the way, in that enchanted place on the top of the forest, a little boy and his bear will always be playing.